If you call yourself a leader, the work you do requires you to work with people, the more important of your emotional intelligence. If the human being make decisions because they feel something.
Ella helps leaders unlock their potential and create impactful, value-driven workplaces. She's here to share how you can amplify your leadership impact.
Thank you for having me.
What does it mean to amplify your leadership impact?
I would believe every single person who made a decision to be a business leader, they make impact with or without their intention. So we make a difference in other people's life. We make a difference in our clients' life. Most of the time, if we are not intentional or not aware enough, we probably make the impact not the ones that we prefer, right? So good or bad, we all make a difference. So if we have intention to be the leader, which means whatever we do, the decision we make, the direction we went, we have people follow us. If that is, we probably need to understand what kind of impact we would love to make. Also, at the same, if your audience, Panida, if your audience, majority of the people are the founders of the business. So we also need to make money, financially sustained at the same time. Also, at the same time, we need to be clear what kind of impact we would love to make through the process of making money.
That's interesting because if you don't have that vision for what kind of impact you want to make, like you said, it could go a different route to what you initially wanted.
Exactly. I do hope people start getting more clarity and be more intentional so they can manage their perceptions, because in business, no matter you're the business owner or the business leader, perception is the reality. And sometimes I see many leaders because they're not intentional enough, so they cannot align their actions with their intention. So they create lots of friction in the process of making things work. And sometimes it's a self-sabotage or consumption of the energy during the process. So in that way, I would say actually we cannot amplify our impact in that kind of conduct. We cannot. We actually consume ourselves a lot in the process of getting things done.
So how does emotional intelligence play a role in enhancing leadership effectiveness?
If you call yourself a leader, the work you do requires you to work it with people and also people. And the human is emotional animals. So if we want others to take actions, particularly to take the actions in the direction, we want the directions for them to take actions. If we want to motivate that kind of action, what we actually motivate is the emotions, because the human being make choices, make decisions, and take actions because they feel something. Well, emotional intelligence, if you work in the organization, the senior you get, the more important of your emotional intelligence, because that determines how well you can mobilize your people around you to work in the direction to get things done as you expected, because that is the only way we can motivate others to take actions. And most of the time, I see leaders burn themselves up. It's because when they are individual employees or when they are individual contributors, they don't mind to roll their sleeves to get things done. But when you have a team, you literally cannot get everything done by yourself because you only have 24 hours. If leaders cannot shift their gears, moving away from, I'm the only person, I need to take care of every task, I need to give ounce of my energy to get things done. If they cannot move from this mindset to another mindset, I need to make sure my team can be successful in their role. My role as the leader can also be successful. This shift depends on how aware, how alert that we can be more emotional, influential to the people that we work with. Because it requires us to bond, requires us to build trust, requires us to manage our perception as we're trustworthy, inspired leader. But for a person, if they do not even have the vocabulary to describe their emotional experience, they won't engage with other people on the emotional level. So it's harder for them to bond with their people. There's never a smooth path for business. It's always up and downs. So those moments actually is a very good time for people to see how as a leader, we also struggle. We're a real human being. We experience emotions. But if leaders are trying to pack and put all their emotional experience on the side and cover it up and avoid to have a conversation with the team about the emotional experience, very likely their ability to get a task done will be negatively impacted.
So you talk about two aspects of emotional intelligence, understanding your own emotions and that of others. So a lot of people think managing teams is just about the team, not themselves. What you said about mindset is important.
Yeah, for leaders, every single time you appear in the eyes of your people, how you conduct yourself, speak very loudly than how you verbally describe a situation. So how do you manage your presence, which means your energy actually speak very loudly of the situation. Whether your people look up at you or your people decided to, this leader is not capable enough. If people make a judgment. As a human, we all make all kinds of judgment. So a leader can manage their energy under pressure or stress, speak very loudly how capable you are. So if you don't know yourself conduct or react or function when the stress is high, it's very likely you won't be able to build a close relationship with the team. You won't be able to make your people look up at you saying, I would love to follow this leader because no matter how hard it is, I trust his judgment in that moment.
Yeah, recently I did hear something that they said if you want to know how people are, like truly, you have to see how they react under pressure.
Exactly. Because no matter how much intelligently know what is supposed to be done in the difficult situation, we cannot have access to that superficial level of the knowledge when stress is high, when the stake is high. We just reverse back to our default settings.
Yeah.
That's the moment we show the true color.
You fall to your level of training. You don't fall to what you want.
Exactly. So in that kind of a moment, we don't have mental space for choices. Developing emotional intelligence or ability when stress is not high, building habits to expand emotional capacity, that emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, where we can have the habits to building up the emotional capacity and making this continually expanding the capacity to be our second nature. I ask some space when the stress is high, when the stake is high, we can still have the mental space to make right choice.
What are some common pitfalls leaders face when trying to improve their impact?
One pattern I see a lot in business because of most of the leaders, they naturally have very good qualities in certain areas. For example, most of them are very hardworking people. They have a very high standard for their performance and conduct. The work, one pattern from leaders I work with is they have this tendency to make even bigger effort in the area that they already doing very well. But they didn't realize sometimes certain strengths, if we overly focus on that, could also be our weakness. For example, have a high standard is wonderful. Have a high standard to the level of being a perfectionist. That's probably going to be contradictory to whatever the result we want to achieve. But sometimes I also see for some leaders, sales leaders in the sales marketing, I see a lot of this kind of a behavior because they care about the quality of the relationship. They want to make everyone happy. So they do everything to please the other parties to make sure the deal can be signed so they can be good service for the others. So when the stress is high, if we always focus on pleasing others, make them happy, actually this is not going to make them a very good senior leaders in the business because how much we can sacrifice for the business, how much boundary we need to build with others. And sometimes, particularly with the people reporting to us in that situation, we cannot please everybody to make them happy. Because as leaders, we carry responsibility of develop our people. And develop means we need to grow our people in certain ways. And the growth and the happiness and the comforts, they don't coexist. Pleasing others as a leader does not default you to lead you to have the positive growth relationship with your team. So your team probably don't even buy you. They don't trust you. Even you try everything to make them happy. They don't. So this is a pattern I see. who are very driven, they want a result very quickly. Previously, they probably can do so by themselves. But since they become a leader, which means they have a team reporting to them, and they still want to, first of all, they want everything get done ASAP, which means the team lost a priority. They have no idea what is your direction, what is the property, because when everything is ASAP, nothing is. Efficiency is super important. So when others probably don't do it, they're going to get involved of all the details of how to get things done. And I see leader of such, they usually becomes the bottleneck for the team and not let it go, because they feels like, oh, if I'm not involved, maybe the result is not as good as I expected, and because I want the result as quick as possible, so I have no time to coach others, to train others, developing others. I have to do it my way. So actually this is the bottleneck, because if you as a team leader or as a manager, when you have a people reporting to me and still the only smart person in the room, that means something wrong, because you haven't for your people to make sure your people can success in their role, so you can move to some other roles or something more important for the business. That's the pattern I see when leaders use their strengths, then if not aware enough or not clear enough, could also be their weakness.
Self-awareness is crucial in leadership.
I know, it's more like a sharpening your razor. Or no matter how senior you are, no matter how many years you've been working in the industry, that is a process, like a never-ending process, because there's always have issues and problems that you need to fix or facing. And I recommend to my clients, when there's a problem for you to fix, rather than think about what's the problem for others, why there's a problem becomes a problem because your people, because your clients, because your peer. The first question is ask yourself, what is my contribution to this situation? So that can help us to fine-tune our self-awareness.
So taking that accountability so that you can solve the problem rather than blaming anyone.
Exactly, because blaming others, honestly, just delay the growth.
Definitely.
But I feel comfortable because we all have egos, right? Because the challenge for leaders is we want a success, and every simple success build up our egos, because we're so good about ourselves. But this is very dangerous, actually. So it's nicer for the leader to build their self-awareness, to understand they are contributing to the successful outcome, but also at the same time, do not just make themselves as the sole resource. So that will help manage the ego. When ego is managed, most of the leaders can have the clarity or objective view about the situation. In the book I published a couple of years ago, I talk a lot about ego. Ego usually create this false reality for us, right? Huge distance between our view and the reality.
So you would say that if someone has a large ego, that is a huge problem for them being in a leadership position.
They cause them more trouble because, first of all, ego is not objective, because the ego does every day is comparing yourself with others and to make you feel better than others. It's almost impossible for you to collaborate with others because everyone is stupid in your eyes. It's almost impossible to create a trustworthy relationship with your team. Constantly compare. No one would love to have this kind of internal competition with anybody, right? Because everyone has a different strengths. We come together for collaboration, so we complement each other. We don't need to compete with everybody. And also because you have if the ego is too large, the ego ego won't allow you to take a constructive feedback.
That's a big problem.
Who can give you constructive feedback? Because everyone give you feedback. It feels like personality attack, personal attack. So you would like going to defend yourself. This is how ego going to create. Ego going to create a variety of emotions, make you feel no one should or can tell you the ugly truth. So that is also the biggest problem, because when we cannot get an objective view about what is the truth, how can we make up the solutions or create the solutions and interventions to resolve the problem? So if we don't know what is the real problem, we won't have the solutions for the problem. So that is the biggest problem in the business. Usually in my industry, we always say the senior the person gets, the more successful the business gets. Actually, the only biggest enemy that we see for the business is the leaders themselves.
Oh, no wonder that I've heard that CEOs, they fire themselves once they get to a certain position and they hire a different CEO.
Yes, because they cannot. And also, I think it's also for that particular reason, I think it's also because at a different stage of the business, we need to have different skill sets and personalities. And sometimes as a business, we can be very attached to the person. So when we are so attached to it, it's unnecessary for us to be a very good CEO of the business. So at a certain stage, founders and the CEOs, ideally, if they can have the skill set, if they are flexible enough to change skills, but it's nicer to recruit a professional CEO.
Can you share a specific strategy or framework that has proven effective for your clients for leadership? Essentially.
There's a variety. I won't use the framework. Framework is quite big. I'm not quite sure about your audience, but if they're interested, if someone is interested in the framework, they can let you know. I can share with you a model, a framework that we develop for the business. But for the funders, they're already very time poor, and maybe they would love to just use some habits, blended some habits in their daily routines, can help them to have the clarity and keep their mind clear and sharp. There's one habit I would highly recommend for people, actually too, because we create pretty much over 50 mini habits for the business leaders. Practice at the different stage, because those habits build up on each other to allow them to have the capacity to dealing with more complex problems and issues in the business. So without knowing who's your audience here, I would just share 2 habits for the leaders, which can be very useful even at the foundational level to the very senior level. One is when they need to keep their mind clear, they need to understand how their mind works. So many people has no clue about how their thinking process is. Yeah. So one habit I always recommend to people is use writing. Writing is the best way for us to get a clarity about our thinking. I'm right to find a solution for the situation. Sometimes could also be the reverse engineer style of writing. Okay, we experience some situation. Let's reverse back to understand how we make decisions, small along the way, to lead to this outcome, this situation will come. So writing is a very good way, but leaders need to have such habits. And writing also have the opportunity, if the leaders feel constantly have very strong emotional experience when they do their work, either I won't use the word of negative emotions because there's no negative or positive, but strong emotions. For example, they can be easily triggered, very angry. They have anger issues. I will highly recommend every single time when they have those moments, create a trigger log for themselves so they understand what kind of information this emotion trying to tell them. Because of emotion, there is lots of information. If your readers' interest, let me know. In my book, Upgrade, I listed questions people can use those prompts in their journal to help them to understand their experience. So when they have very strong emotional experience, it's quite necessary for them to learn skills to process it, rather than avoid it, because lots of leaders I know, particularly people are very strong technical-wise. Engineers, we don't want to talk about emotions, we don't talk about the technical stuff. But if you want to work with people, emotion is the main tool to engage and align with others. Use writing to reflect, using writing to understand the emotions, use writing to understand your thinking process, because majority of a human, we quite reactive to our thoughts. And we believe whatever pops up in our mind, but it's not.
Yeah, that is very true. I think journaling is very game-changing for understanding yourself and your emotions. And I've heard that recently a lot of founders are going to therapy and it's been helpful. It wasn't like this. I think it was like you have to be strong. If you're a leader, you need to be tough, right? I think the narrative is changing now and it's a great thing.
I think go to therapy means they're strong. Because the therapy means we would love to use other people's expertise to help us to understand what is what doesn't work for us, or why we behave, why we react, why we feel, why we think this way, and it can cause the trouble. Which means this person would love to have the clarity of that. Because have the patience to look into the chaos requires courage. Lots of people, when they saw the chaos, they run away. Don't even have the skills or knowledge or patience to create orders in that situation. But as funders, it feels like we every day we're living in the different kind of storms. Sometimes we lead the fire for ourselves. Sometimes others lead the fire, but we are always function as firefighters. We need to understand how these things all work together. When we have the clarity, that's the moment we are capable enough to put a prevention in place. What used to be a fire for us, unnecessary to repeat it for the next time. And for anyone who grow out of the experience, which means they don't allow the same mistakes repeatedly happen, and they have to repeatedly put out the same fire, I think they are the strongest person in the world. Because sometimes we cannot prevent things to happen, but the strongest person, they know how to identify those issues as early as possible, and they are resourceful enough to resolve those issues from the root. That's the strongest person in my view, because that requires them to lead to face to their challenging emotional experience and calm themselves to make the right decisions. So they not react to the situation, they can truly respond to the situation.
Definitely. So if you can face yourself, you can face the world stronger.
The external world is just a reflection of our inner world. In my book, I mentioned we create our own reality. We go through those challenging realities. It's because something inside of us needs to be renewed, needs to be upgraded. That's why we need those experiences, those situations to help us identify the learning moment. External world is the manifestation of our internal conditions. If leaders if they can truly look at the situation, look at the experience from such lenses, they can really use whatever situation they are facing, challenging, difficulty, problem, disappointment, as the learning opportunity for them. Because whatever happens, if we can process that, if we can find a way not to react to the same way, then we can definitely resolve the problem easily.
Definitely. How important is mentorship in becoming a more impactful leader?
We need a mentor. None of us are working on the path that we are first a human being on that path since the earth was created. I always feel there's someone, even many times as a founder, as a leader, we feel like the challenge, difficulty we face could be unique to us. But the reality is, it is not.
Yeah, that's true.
So I tend to find the coach, find the mentor, find the teacher, find the advocate. This more like we create network. We elect the people to be our qualified advisors because they have the skills, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the approach that can help us when we have issues and problems, when we get lost, when we don't know what to do. So when we need a sounding board, we need qualified advisors to be our sounding board. And sometimes it's unnecessary to be our family, our friends. If it's lucky, we could find them to be our sounding board. But we need people to have experience. Particularly, they have the knowledge. They know how to guide us. They probably also can make the connections for us. Us to some people, connect us to some work, connects us to some tools. So those kind of connection actually is super important. And most of the time we can only get all those resources from the people who have already walk the path that we are currently working on.
Do all mentors have to be human, or can they be books or other kind of tools?
I cannot say only human now because I do know lots of the people use ChatGPT kind of stuff to do the brainstorming. I think would because sometimes I also, when I finish some writings, I also ask ChatGPT, can you give me some other perspective that I haven't considered? So I think this kind of dialogue challenging your mind is quite important. But currently, I think we are still at a very early stage using all those AI technology. So we still need to make a judgment whether the points they make it makes sense or not. Because I do feel it doesn't make sense yet, particularly research paper. You guys are really crap on that. You need time to improve. It's not going to be hard if you ask AI for any kind of brainstorming sessions. We use AI, but it's also won't hurt if you can identify certain people in your circle that admire their achievement. You really admire how they achieve what they achieved and learn their insights or wisdom. We still function in a human-centered world. It's not like we have the AI idea that we can make it happen. We still need human connections.
Having a mentor is definitely a life hack.
Yes, because I cannot imagine I can have even now, like in my industry over 20 years, I still invest in mentorship and coaching services for myself. So previously, I remember when I was in-house as a learning development manager, every month when we run this new employee induction workshop, I always say, find the smart people, create a network. You can connect to the smart people, which means those people, they have the solution, they have the ideas, they can provide you insights. When you have a problem, reach out to them. If you cannot reach out to the smart people, at least read a book written by the smart people that may provide answers.
What role does organizational culture play in leadership effectiveness?
This is a big question. This go hand in hand. Culture is like collective behavior, collective. So what do we do together? What is accepted? What is encouraged in this environment? If you are the leader, we carry responsibility to shape the culture. So what does that mean? It's simple. You understand what you stand for. When you have clarity about why you make certain decisions, because behind every choices of the decisions we make, there sits some our core values. And have such a clarity, we would be very purposeful, because whatever choice we made, whatever decision we made, no matter it's to do something or not to do something, how to do something, all those decisions we make, we need to make sure it demonstrates our core values. The challenging for business is lots of leaders, we don't have the clarity to differentiate our actual core values with our aspirational values. So we all value honesty, integrity, but in reality, we make small lies when we need to get things done or achieve a certain result. So leadership is super important because it's from understanding yourself first, because you need to lead from authentic space. We cannot just teach leader all the techniques so they pretend they're someone else. We can never pretend to be someone else. We need to understand who we are, why we do things the way we do it. When we have such a clarity, then we become the leader. We also need to shape what is important for the business. What is the culture that it can really encourage all the employees flourish in the environment, and at the same time, the business can also thrive.
So your values get projected onto the company. So you need to make sure you know what they are.
Alignment is super important. When we feel aligned as an individual, when we conduct ourselves, when we make a choice and make decisions and take an approach to the work through our values, actually we feel very aligned. We feel whole-passive. We don't need to pretend or hide a certain part of ourselves in the process. So we can really bring the whole part of ourselves to the workplace. It's the same to the employee. Identify what it is. When you recruit your team members, make sure that alignment is very important. Skills is very easy to train and develop in the workplace, but this value alignment is harder to change because we all grown up in the way we grown up. We all carry certain kind of core values. Sometimes we don't even know what it is if there's no conflict. I always encourage conflict in the workplace because through conflicts, agreement, the best moment for us to understand what is most important. And yet that means that we start to dig deeper to understand what is the values over there. Business and value alignment, particularly for yourself. Every time you make decisions, reflect back, say, oh, what is the values drive me to make such a choice? And is this value need to be amplified in my workplace? Is it a shared value for my team or for the business? As this shared value can directly impact or connect with the business outcome. How do we connect ourselves? How do we build a relationship with our partners or clients? That is super important. So eventually, I view as a leader or as a founder, if we know ourselves accurately, then it's how can we make ourselves bigger, shiny from who we are. If we can amplify that part, no one can copy us. We can be successful because business decisions, they can be creative. We can utilize a variety of tools to do that. But what others cannot duplicate or copy is always who we are. We are unique.
I agree, especially with AI. The only thing that makes you unique is you figure out who you are and make sure you're not just doing something to conform, because conformity is not exactly a good thing, especially in this age.
Yeah, totally agree. Because I guess lots of the people conform is because they don't know. They probably haven't got opportunity to discover who they truly are. So they learned to copy others. This is also in workplace. We saw, this is not a new theory. Why people in their 40s, they start to experience midlife crisis because the first 20 years we copy others' successful story. And then even we success, even we achieve, we cannot feel fulfilled and satisfied. That's why. So if people can start to utilize whatever the life experience they have as the opportunity to discover who they truly are, to know themselves more accurate, I don't think they need to go through midlife crisis. We don't have to wait for years to experience crisis. You can start a minor crisis when you're in 20s because you use every single difficult experience, setbacks, and opportunity to know yourself and start to craft your own story rather than follow other people's story. Right? When you're 20 years into it, you have the confidence to be who you are and attract more business, more people to your world rather than just suddenly feel, oh my gosh, I'm lost. I don't know who I am, even I'm in my 40s.
An important life hack, how to not have a midlife crisis or a quarter life crisis, to figure out who you are, your unique experiences, especially your struggles. That's what makes you better if you are able to grow from that.
Yeah, I hope if one thing people can take away from our conversation today, it's the hope. Starting from now, everyone, when they look around, when they review whatever the experience, good or bad, they had in their life, they consider those as a learning class. University class is the class you chose, and you need to find out what to learn through that experience, that class, that subject, so you can move on to the next experience. And you're not going to need to repeat this similar experience. Take your life experience, be the owner, then figure out what you meant to learn. Every experience is a good experience. As I can find out what is the one thing I need to learn from this experience for myself.
Definitely. So what advice would you give to new leaders looking to make a significant impact?
Many things. Okay, the first thing I would say, if they envision themselves to make a significant impact, then they need to accept a package. This kind of impact and success comes with frustration, stress, building your emotional relationship with yourself. Because when you have such a big desire to make a huge impact, the very thing we need to learn is frustration and stress. They're going to be part of the journey. So not get burned by all those experience, emotions is the first lesson for us. Second of all, huge impact on others actually is the result that we can make a huge impact on ourselves. This transformation is not easy. It's going to be messy and it's going to be painful, because we're trying to transform something outside. But when we truly make that impact, something in us also need to be transformed. So emotionally, be yourself's best friend is what I would suggest. But this journey, sometimes it's better you find a partner to do it. A partner could be your coach, could be your mentor. Because a human is an animal of habits and pattern. And lots of a pattern that we function in, because we're part of that pattern, we won't be able to see that. It's always better to have a third pair of eyes to look at it. identify the pattern that doesn't work for us or no longer work for us. So be your emotional friend and find someone skillful to help you shift your gears. Be prepared. Significant impact depends on how you define that. Some problem, I build a very successful business and I make loads of money. Some could be a solution for a problem existing in the society, but it takes a long time for me to create a buy-ins in the society. So whatever the significant impact, the definition you give to it, be prepared. The bigger achievement you want to have, you need to have that come out from your authentic self. So it's not like you only focus on external gains. It's more like you find the connections between why you need to do this, why you need to make such a significant impact in the world. When you have clarity of the why, then every day when you're trying to figure out how to solve the problems and how to make the impact, you can filter out your how through who you truly are. That is important because that makes you feel you are the solution for the problems already. So whatever you do comes from your authentic center of yourself. And that will give you lots of positive energy, even though sometimes externally you might face lots of setbacks.
Yeah, definitely. I think authenticity is like really key, especially if you're working and you're bound to get burnt out. But the person who burns out and quit and the person who gets tired and doesn't quit, it all comes down to whether they're in line with who they really are.
I'm not encouraging people to get burned out. When people have this strong desire to make impact, like my younger self, be passionate. When we are so passionate about doing certain things, we can be very obsessed about that, which means sometimes we ignore our health, ignore our physical limits because we have this strong sense of urgency to get everything done overnight, which never happens. So I will say this kind of personality, we're prone to have a burnout. We will experience lots of high when we work long hours, when we dive into the work. We don't want to take a break. I had that experience. That's why in my book, I'm talking about a physical operating system because I had a burnout in my 30s, only because I love my work so much. I refuse during the day when I'm diving to the work, I refuse to take a break. I refuse to drink water because I don't have time to go to the bathroom. Is this kind of a habit sustainable?
Yeah.
We're not. And for majority of people, maybe your audience are also, we're knowledge workers. We depend on relying on our smart brain to do the work. If you are 20, you might feel my body is healthy because I don't need to see the doctor. I'm very healthy. So even put an all-nighter, you probably can recover easily. But give it 10 years, in your 30s, 35, you probably start to notice your body can no longer hold that kind of all-nighters. My suggestion is be mindful that your brain is part of your body. And so treat your body very well, you don't understand how your body functions. Help your brain have focus, smart juice to allow you to have the insights to identify solutions. Maybe your success is going to be short-lived. And if you truly enjoy doing what you do, probably find a way to see how can you sustain. Create a lifestyle can help you to sustain your high performance rather than only achieve your high performance as a short-lived burst.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's why systems is so important. Once you get it, you build systems around it rather than continuing to overwork yourself.
I totally agree. System is super important. I'm a lazy person as well. If we can identify certain things that you can help yourself to set and forget and don't continue to use your mind to make choices, make decisions, you will reserve lots of mental space. Set up the routine, understand like a human body, we function as a whole. So create your daily routines and the lifestyle, give you the balanced hormones so you can really continue to sharpen the mind to do the work you require your mind to work.
So what do you think is quietly growing that most people would miss in leadership development?
What is quiet growing?
Something that's like most people would miss? It's not super popular, but yeah.
I would think habits. The more I work with the leaders, the more I realize it's not knowledge, not power or powerful at all, because only small amount of the people will apply the knowledge into their daily practice. So if you learn some knowledge, new knowledge, make it your habit. Only habits is your second nature. Create your day and get a clear clarity about how your mind works, how your thinking process is, how you react to certain situations emotionally, how you make a judgment about a certain situation, how you interact with your people, how would you like to build up your reputation, how would you like yourself or your business stand for, and how in 5 or 10 years' time, how would you like others to remember you as a human being without titles? All those daily reflections and build some micro habits in our daily routines so we can maintain our clarity and focus. And most importantly, what I learned in last decades is how I treat my body. So how do I match my task with my energy level? So I need to notice how my energy goes every day. And then I can design a task match with my peak and the low moments of the energy so I can be even more productive with Renee, because for me as efficiency is also super important for us. And the more you run your work, you run your business, we have endless tasks to do. But when to do what kind of a task will make a huge difference in terms of how much we can achieve at the end of the day. So I think it's the minor habits leaders can practice. It's always a practice every day. So you know what kind of habits have compound effect. If you just continue to do it, it will give you something back. So those are compound effects. So if your audience like, I can share with a link with you, which is the leadership imbalance self-assessment. So they're also talking a lot about the different kind of habits. So people can identify which area they're good, but which area probably are the weakest link for them.
Sure, we can definitely share that. Thank you so much, Ella, for coming on the podcast and for sharing your insights. I think we ended up on an important note. The secret to success is found in your daily routine.
Daily habits, yeah. So build good habits and utilize your awake time effectively as possible. That will make you a different or outstanding leader already. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.